The Ace Attorney Trilogy is one of my most nostalgic game series. I have so many good memories of playing it. I believe that the original 3 games are the best Ace Attorney games in the series. To celebrate these great games, today I will be counting down my top 14 favorite cases from the Ace Attorney Trilogy. Keep in mind that this is all just my opinion. The cases you like might not be the cases I like. Also, spoiler warning. With that out of the way, let's begin. Here are my top 14 Ace Attorney Trilogy cases. Number 14. The Lost Turnabout. It seems like everyone hates this case, and I agree with them. As a first case, I already had low expectations for it, but it managed to shatter those expectations and be even worse. One word: amnesia. The amnesia plot point is so annoying. It's just another way for the game to give you a tutorial, and boy, does it get boring real quick. And the case itself is so obvious. Being the second game in the series, we already understand the first trial formula. The first witness is the villain. I immediately suspected Richard Wellington, and the case from that point on was extremely easy. Number 13. The First Turnabout. Sure, this case is certainly iconic, but that doesn't excuse it from the fact that it's just meh. It has a few decent moments, but it just didn't make me feel anything. Just a decent tutorial for the rest of the game. Number 12. Turnabout Big Top. This case is quite infamous among Ace Attorney fans. Some say it's the worst case in the series, but I think you should all cut it some slack. It is certainly not the worst out there. The mystery itself is quite interesting, and Acro's backstory is absolutely brutal. I really felt for the dude. Sadly, all the pros of this case are weighed down by its cons. For one, some of the characters are absolutely abhorrent. They're just so annoying. Also, 2 of them are in a love triangle with a minor. Yikes. This is also where we see Franziska at her worst. The whip joke was alright in the last case, but in this one, it gets really old really fast. This case is just straight up annoying. Number 11. Turnabout Samurai. Again, another case that's just kinda meh. It's by no means a bad case, just kind of subpar. Is it just me, or is this case really slow-paced? I just didn't find any of the characters interesting. They're just so bland, none of the designs stick out to me. Will Powers, Dee Vasquez, Penny Nichols, none of them are memorable at all. The mystery itself was alright, and it had some good twists here and there. Making poor Cody Hackins cry on the stand tugged at my heartstrings for sure. By the end of it, I certainly did feel bad for Will Powers, and seeing Dee admit her defeat was quite satisfying, but not satisfying enough to get this case into the top 10. Number 10. Turnabout Sisters. Some people really don't like this case. Personally, I think it's pretty good. It does a nice job of driving the overarching plot forwards, and smoothly introduces some great mainstay characters such as Maya and Edgeworth. This case does a really great job of making you hate its villain. Yes, Red White is a very obvious villain, but that does not take away from the fact that he does such a great job of making your blood boil. Not only does he frame Maya to make it look like she murdered her own sister, but he also frames Phoenix as well. It is later revealed that he is a professional blackmailer that has caused many people to commit suicide. Yet at the same time, he is goofy enough not to be too intimidating. This case does a great job at not only making the player feel emotion, but it also does a great job at setting up the mood for the rest of the series. Number 9. Turnabout Memories. Short, sweet, and effective. The way a first trial should be. We get plenty of backstory in this case, not only for Mia, but also for Phoenix. It was so crazy to see young Phoenix. He was a far cry from the badass we have today. Playing as Mia for the first time was also very interesting. not only do we get to see her prowess in the courtroom, but we also get to see her interactions with her former employer, Marvin Grossberg. We don't get to see him too much, so it was nice to have him in the spotlight for once. This case also manages to subvert the first case formula brilliantly. This time, the first witness cannot be the killer, since it is not only our defendant, but the main character of the series, Phoenix Wright. This case immediately ramps up to 11 with the introduction of Dahlia Hawthorne, one of the most enjoyably evil villains in the series. Doing battle with her is not only difficult, but also extremely fun, since she has plans within plans, and taking her down is just so satisfying. Now this is what a first case should be. Number 8. Reunion and Turnabout. I think this is a very underrated case. Due to being Injustice for All, it often gets a bad rep, but this is in no way a bad case. After all, this is the first case that introduces the Faye family conflict, and also introduces some great new characters who would later become iconic, such as Pearl Faye and Franziska von Karma. Speaking of which, Franziska makes for a very good opponent in this case. She uses any underhanded tactic she can, bringing back memories of her father. She is a very dangerous opponent that will have you on the ropes at all times. This is also the case that brings back Maya, since we haven't seen her since 1-4. It was great to have her back, as her presence was missed. This case gets very dark very fast. It almost treads the line of horror at some points. The scene with the fake Maya covered in blood evoked real fear in me, and is one of the few times in the Ace Attorney series that I've been legitimately scared. There's just something so unsettling about Kurain Village, and the creepy soundtrack definitely helps with that. We also get some very dark backstory for our main villain, one way darker than usual, since it involves her accidentally killing 14 people. Despite her actions, I really did feel bad for Eenie Miney. Her backstory was just so brutal, since none of what happened to her was really her fault. Number 7. The Stolen Turnabout. If I could describe this case in one word, it would be fun. Everything about it is fun. A fun mystery, and plenty of fun characters. Larry Butts makes a return, and as per usual, is life's punching bag. We also have Rhonda Light, a really strange character, who actually turns out to be guilty, just not of murder. And how can I talk about this case without mentioning its villain, Luke Atney? He was one of the funniest villains in the whole series, and his whole demeanor just radiates weirdness. I still can't tell if he is very smart or just very insane. This case also brings back Adrienne Andrews, which was a nice surprise. I quite liked her. This case has some great plot twists. It involves blackmail inside blackmail. Also, I found it quite interesting that her client was technically guilty. He just got away with it on a loophole. I also enjoyed how the case started out as just a theft case and then evolved into a murder. We need more cases in the series that aren't just pure murder. Overall, this case was just plain fun, earning it a higher spot on this list. Number 6. Bridge to the Turnabout. This is what I would call an epic of a trial. It's almost like an endurance test of plot twists and emotional intensity. This case has some amazing moments. You even get to play as Edgeworth for a while. Seeing Edgeworth go up against Franziska was the fan service we all wanted. It was an amazing duel of two of the most dangerous prosecutors in the series. This case also has some great comedy. Larry's testimony made me laugh out loud, especially the reaction from everyone else. There were some really great lines in there that you will never forget. And who can forget how tense everything got when the bridge caught fire? It's one of the most intense moments in the whole series, that's for sure. The case also does a great job of wrapping up the overarching plot of Trials and Tribulations. All of the Mia flashbacks finally become relevant, and Gatto gets his time to shine as a real villain. This case just hits you over and over again with great twists. I can see why it's many people's favorite, although, for me, it doesn't make my top 5. Sorry, I guess? Number 5. Turnabout Beginnings. At last, we've hit the top 5. These are my absolute favorite cases, and Turnabout Beginnings definitely fits the criteria to be one of my favorites. I will admit, I do have a bit of a bias, since I have quite the nostalgic connection to this case. I have a very distinct memory of playing this case hooked up to a computer monitor. In this case, we, again, get some more Mia backstory. Some damn good backstory at that. We also get some Edgeworth backstory as well, since this is his first case, just like Mia. 2 future law legends going head to head. This time, we are defending someone who has already been charged with murder, and who has recently escaped prison. Terry Falls is such a pitiable character. From his first words, you already start to feel bad for him. This case has so many great twists and turns, it's hard not to get hooked. Despite being a case with no investigation, the case is still extremely complex. Despite having a great mystery, what this case excels at is emotional intensity. The case slowly and slowly gets more emotional and reaches a fever pitch at the very end. I legit cried at Terry's suicide when I first got to that part. This is one of the few moments in a video game that has ever made me cry, and I have to commend it for that. Number 4. Recipe for Turnabout. Now this one is a hot take. This case is not only my favorite filler trial, but also my favorite trial in Trials and Tribulations. Controversial, I know. Maybe it's just because I have so much nostalgia for this case. Playing through it for the first time is one of my favorite memories. Perhaps I remember it fondly due to its colorful cast of characters, most of which are played for laughs. Did I mention that this is a mostly comedic case? I'm usually not too big on comedy, but this case managed to hit all the right notes for me. The star of this whole case is its villain, Furio Tigre. From his impersonation of Phoenix to the Zinniop gag, he is absolutely hilarious. The case does have its fair share of serious moments though. The Viola subplot is extremely sad, and duking it out in court with Furio Tigre is one of the most tense cross-examinations in the whole series. In fact, Furio almost wins on a few occasions, making him quite the intimidating opponent. Now this is how you make a good filler case. Number 3. Rise from the Ashes. Rise from the Ashes is by far the longest case in the Ace Attorney trilogy, but that works to its advantage. After all, it is an extremely complex case. Unfortunately, Maya is not in this case. Instead, our assistant this time is Emma Skye. Emma is one of the characters that really makes this case. Without her, and Maya instead, this case would be nowhere as good. After all, the stakes of this case rely on Emma. Every new character in this case is memorable, from the cough-up queen Angel Star to the king of the death stare, Damon Gant. I would like to give major props to Damon Gant real quick. He is one of the scariest villains in the whole series. I love how sometimes he completely stops talking and stares at the player. Without saying a word, he is able to convey the fact that he is pissed. These stares get longer and longer over the course of the case. Sometimes, you might even think your game froze. Horror seems to be a running theme in this case. The latter half of it takes a turn towards the terrifying, and some scenes from the SL9 incident could be straight out of a horror movie. Emma being framed for SL9 is also very disturbing. The way she freezes up on the stand makes me shiver. In my opinion, this is the scariest case in the Ace Attorney trilogy. Number 2. Turnabout Goodbyes. This is by far the most iconic case in the Ace Attorney series. Everything about it is just so memorable, even the beginning setup. The fearsome prosecutor you have fought for the entire game so far has now been arrested, and now you have to defend him. It does a great job of taking a character that was once an enemy and quickly turning him into an ally. The game also does a great job of hyping up the case's big bad, Manfred von Karma. I made an entire video analyzing him and how this case brilliantly handles him. You can check it out in the description. This case has an amazing atmosphere. it's so bleak and dreary. This is in part due to the emotional tensity of the case, especially the later half, where Edgeworth is convinced he killed his own father. The late August atmosphere also helps with this a lot. All the trees have no leaves, and everything looks cold, helping to create a foreboding atmosphere that complements the emotional intensity quite well. We also get some great backstory for both Phoenix and Edgeworth that perfectly explain why they are the way they are. This is also the first case where we ever solve a case within a case, and it was handled very well. Solving the DL6 incident managed to work so well within the case. It never really felt like you were solving an entirely different crime due to the similar parties involved. Overall, a near perfect case and one of my favorites. And now we've finally reached number 1. Farewell, My Turnabout. This is not only my favorite case in the original Ace Attorney trilogy, but also my favorite case in the whole series. This is because of many factors, with one of them being just how tense it is. The stakes in this case are ramped up to 11. Instead of just having your career as an attorney on the line, you also have Maya's life at stake. If you don't get a not guilty verdict, Maya will die. Of course, that's not all that makes this case great. This case is the return of Miles Edgeworth. The last time we saw him was all the way back in Rise from the Ashes, and boy, was his return worth the wait. This is made all the better by his new theme that just rings triumph. Speaking of characters, this case introduces some of the best side characters in the series. One such example is Shelley the Killer, one of the most intimidating characters in all of Ace Attorney. What makes him so scary is his cold professionalism. He takes nothing personally and has no qualms about taking a life. He just views it as another job. He is absolutely terrifying, made even more scarier by the fact that he gets away with everything he does. We also have Adrienne Andrews, who at first seems quite professional, but then turns out to be a broken woman. Her story is absolutely heart-wrenching, and some parts of it are quite hard to sit through. And I can't talk about characters in this case without mentioning the great Matt on Guard. He does such a good job of tricking you into thinking that he is just a clueless actor, when in reality, he is one of the most evil characters in the series. The case does an excellent format screw and makes it so that your client is actually guilty, making Phoenix doubt himself and go through some major character development. This case has it all: a great mystery, great twists, great characters, and some great character development, making it my number 1 Ace Attorney trial. So, that was my ranking of all 14 original Ace Attorney cases. I hope you enjoyed. I have so many good memories of the Ace Attorney series. These games are very dear to my heart, so making this video was very enjoyable. Tell me down in the comments what your favorite Ace Attorney case is and why. It's always interesting to hear what others think are the best moments in the series. Also, tell me what your favorite Ace Attorney game is. It doesn't have to be one from the original series. Anyways, this is CJ Max signing off. Have a nice tragedy.